Hey my good friends, Sam Haymart for Test Driven TV. I recently had the chance to spend a week with both the Honda Ridgeline and the Toyota Tacoma in their top trim grades to see what they're really like to live with. So I've taken bits and pieces of both of these two test drives and put them together right here so we can compare them face to face. A face-off. Before we get out on the road, we're going to talk about styling just a little bit because that is a big topic with the Ridgeline. A lot of people say it just looks like a giant Pilot pickup. Well, it should, because it is based on the Honda Pilot crossover SUV. Basically, it is the same body shell. There are a few differences up front. This has a different grille, a completely different lower bumper design down there that's a little bit more square-jawed and truck-like, I'd say. This is a top of the line, so it has the LED headlights, which also have LED running lights built in here. It's just a little bit more of a trucky grille, but honestly, I'll agree, it does look a lot like the Pilot. As we look at the side here, there's a big difference between this Ridgeline and the last generation. First of all, this looks more like a traditional truck. You've actually got a cut line here between the cab and the cargo box. Now, the reality is structurally, this is all one piece underneath, just like before. But before, it had one piece of steel that tied from the cab into the bed. And so what they had to do is create this sort of angled buttress on the old truck to help brace it structurally so that we didn't have wrinkling, tearing, cracking, any kind of stress on the metal when the body of the truck would flex, whether it was under load or on a rough road. And that's just always been the thing with trucks. Because of the way they're designed, they need to move around structurally. So what they've done here is they've hung a separate piece of steel here on the side of the cargo box that allows that flex to occur. There's a rubber seal here, and it really just has the look of a traditional pickup truck now to go along with its newfound structural flexibility. Styling changes from the 2015 Tacoma are mostly self-evident, so I'm not going to walk through all of them, but it did get a complete reskin sharing only the roof stamping, and though the greenhouse appears identical, the doors are actually all new with a slightly higher window line, and the 5-foot composite rear cargo box also got an inch taller. Our tester here, in case you were wondering, is blazing blue pearl, and it has a 5-foot cargo box, and while a 6-foot box is available on other trim grades, curiously, Toyota doesn't offer it with a limited for some reason. Since I'm demonstrating stuff on this truck, I want to show something that actually I think works pretty good, and that is the optional tonneau cover that you can get on this thing. It's a standalone option, and a lot of these things, they don't tend to work as good as the aftermarket stuff you can get, but this one I think is pretty well done. So first of all, this is a locking tailgate, so when this is up and when it's locked, you can't get into this tonneau cover. It's secure. So the way you open it is, you let that down. It is a soft opening tailgate, by the way. So to open this, there's a little handle underneath, and you can fold it open, and you can do this with one person, doesn't take two, and you fold it open like that. Now if you want to remove it, there's another handle under here that you pull, and on both sides you can just lift it right up and take it out. It helps if you got a buddy, but you don't need that. It's not so heavy that you can't get up in the bed and do it yourself. Now, one thing I want to point out here is this actually has some pretty robust ribbing here structurally, so it's not really flimsy at all. Now, I don't know if you're actually going to want to get up there and stand on it, dance around like a platform, but I think it's probably going to stand the test of time. And of course, because it's from the factory, it's under factory warranty. Out here at the back of the Ridgeline, a few things I need to show you because there's a lot going on. Now, first of all, it's got a tailgate. All trucks have tailgates, nothing really new there. It opens to a composite cargo box that's 5 feet in length. Again, in this class, that's getting to be pretty commonplace. But what is quite different here is the fact that this tailgate actually has another trick to it. You can actually open it like a swing gate. Now, you might say, why would you want to do that? Well, one reason is so you can get in here closer to open the trunk that's also down here below the bed. Now look in there, that is a huge deep trunk. You can put a lot in there and it's lockable. It ties in with your power locking, so you can use a key or
you can use it with the key fob when you lock and unlock the truck. So it's a safe place to store a lot of things. And best yet, and I've seen this at events, you can line this thing with ice and drinks, and it can be a giant ice chest. There's a drain plug down there so you can drain it out afterwards, and it's completely watertight. That, I think, is very cool. And of course, there's also a 110 outlet over here, so if you're really tailgating, there's one more thing you got to know about. This bed, it becomes a giant speaker. You can switch the stereo to output. There are exciters, they call them, on the inside panels of this bed. I can't really play anything here because I'd be breaking copyright laws one way, shape, or form, but trust me, it really has a good sounding bed speaker.
Moving inside, the cabin is all new in its design with a horizontal layout to the dash. Depending on the trim grade, accent colors are found on the panel above the glove box and on the door panels. In the Limited, the accent trim matches the hickory leather seats. The instrument cluster is new with a TFT display between two large dials, and it's easy to read at a glance. The steering wheel mounted controls let you navigate that information in addition to audio adjustments. Its center stack I thought was well laid out with the infotainment system up high at eye level, the HVAC controls below, and multiple other ancillary buttons and knobs a little bit further down. Ours had the Qi wireless phone charging pad too, but even if you don't have that, the cubby is just the right place for your phone.
Overall, I like the design of this new interior. This horizontal layout definitely has a more contemporary feel, and it actually feels a little bit more spacious than the last generation truck, which had more of a vertical design here. Now, there are a few things I wanted to point out, which I noticed while I was spending some time in this week, and that first thing is the seating position. Unlike a lot of trucks, you're sitting down in this like a car, and this has the exact same seating position as last generation Tacoma. And so basically what that means is your legs are straight out in front of you. This is a shallower cab, so you're down in this rather than feeling like you're sitting up on top of something like a lot of trucks. That's something that's just personal preference. A lot of people like that.
The Tacoma Limited's leather seats up front are manually adjustable, not power, which you'd hope for at this $40,000 price range. They were, however, comfortable enough once you got them adjusted, and they are heated.
The rear seat compartment back here is not something you're going to mistake for a full-size pickup by any stretch, and that's for a few reasons. The first being, this seat cushion actually sits down pretty low. As you can see, my knees are perched up, and so it's just not a natural seating position, and that's because this cab is actually pretty shallow. I don't have a lot of headroom up here either, so they really can't raise this seat up. The other thing is legroom. As you can see, my knees are just sort of getting right up against those seats. I'm about 5'10". These seats are not all the way back, not all the way forward. They're sort of in the middle. So if you had somebody big in front of you and you were an adult back here, it might be getting a little bit tighter than what you see here. Now, we do sit 3 across. Again, big adults back here, it might not be too comfy for a long trip. The interior of the Ridgeline is almost identical to the Honda Pilot upon which it's based. There are a few differences here and there in switchgear, some of the controls, but it's virtually identical. So sitting here feels very much the same. You've got some very comfortable seats here. These are leather in this particular model, and they've got a nice firm but comfortable feel to them, and they do hold you pretty good. There's armrests here which fold down because the center console design is a little bit different than in most trucks as well as in most SUVs. It's actually low. There's not a big armrest up on top, but when you open it, there's actually a very large storage area down in here, even though it is down low. But the nice part is, if you're a lady and you've got a big purse, it's a nice place to put that, or if you've got other things that you're bringing with you. Cup holders right here, up here in the front of the console, a nice big place for your phone, and all the outlets that you need to plug that into are right there. There's also a cubby here that can work for a phone or sunglasses, whatever might fit there. Center stack, very simply laid out. And with all of this, the material quality in here is very good. It's Honda. And I say that like, why wouldn't it be? But that really is the thing. Honda is known for making some of the best interiors in the business. And when it comes to material, fit, and finish, it really is quite the price of $42,000 as far as what it feels like. And the good news is, if you get the base model, quite a bit less money, you get this nice expensive feel here. Now, sitting here, the seating position, a little bit different than most mid-sized trucks. It's a little bit more like you're sitting down in a car. The hood you can see quite a bit of out there. It doesn't disappear like in some SUVs. The steering wheel has all the controls that you'd want on it right here. This is tilt and telescoping, but it is a manual adjustment. And the instrument cluster in front of me is a 2-dial design, actually 3, but it's a 2-circle design. In the center, a big information screen that you can customize with a whole lot of different information. Now, sitting back here in the rear seat of the Ridgeline isn't quite like sitting in the back seat of a Pilot. It is quite different, in fact. The first thing is the seating position here is actually pretty high, a lot higher than it is in some of the mid-sized trucks out there. So to me, it's a much more natural seating position. Now, I would say it would be more comfortable, but these are pretty flat and pretty stiff seats back here, so I really wouldn't want to sit back here for a very long time. That said, legroom's pretty good. These seats are about halfway forward, halfway back, so I will point out that if you had a tall driver up front, I'm 5'9", that's what this seat is set for. If they were much taller, I'd be starting to run out of some space back here. Good news is, headroom's still pretty good. There is one challenge getting in and out of this back seat. These doors are a little bit on the narrow side, and they don't open all that wide. You would think if they're going to be narrow, they'd really let those open up, maybe even like 90 degrees. But so if you're a really large person, getting in and out of the back seat might be a bit of a challenge, or just take a little bit of extra care. Once you're here, though, it's all good. There's a lot of amenities back here. You've got vents, and there are 2 USB ports too back here for charging. There's also a fold-down armrest in the middle. And when it comes to folding these seats, these lower cushions actually fold upward. There's a 60-40 split, so you can have one or the other. I've got one folded up there to show you, but you can fold them up together. And then you got a lot of space that you can use back here for big, tall boxes, TV boxes, things like that that you might get from the home store.
Motivating the Toyota Tacoma is a new 3.5-liter V6 and a 6-speed automatic transmission. This powertrain offers 278 horsepower and higher fuel economy than before.
Well, I have to hand it to Toyota. Putting this 3.5-liter engine in here with this new 6-speed automatic, a dramatic improvement over the old 4-liter, and that's because this is more refined. It's a little bit quieter, and even though the power isn't as much as the GMC and Chevrolet twins offer, it is more power than before. Now, what they've done here is they've melded some technologies together from both their Lexus brand and the Toyota brand with the hybrids. And what I mean is they've got the D4S fuel injection on here, which is both port and direct fuel injection, and what that gives you is a lot better tuning for the power curve. You can put the torque where you want it, you can put the power where you want it, and with the Atkinson cycle that comes from the hybrid version of this engine, you get better fuel economy. So for improvement over the old 4-liter, we've got more power, and we've got, of course, better fuel economy. And then with the 6-speed automatic here, you've got better drivability across the board. Now, yes, it is a pretty mild tune because, well, the Chevrolet has more power, and you can definitely feel it in that truck. But if you're purely looking at Toyota, you're going to find that this powertrain is miles and away higher in terms of overall drivability and likability than the old 4-liter was.
As tested, the Toyota Tacoma Limited 4x4 we have here is rated by the EPA at 18 mpg city, 23 mpg highway, and 20 mpg combined. In my week with it, I achieved 21 mpg combined with a 50-50 mix of city and highway, and using the AC occasionally.
The 2017 Ridgeline is available in both all-wheel drive and front-wheel drive. This is an all-wheel drive model, but they all have the same engine, 3.5-liter direct-injected V6, 280 horsepower, and it comes exclusively with a 6-speed automatic transmission. In the all-wheel drive here, the EPA rates it at 18 mpg city, 25 mpg highway, and 21 mpg combined. I always ask, how does it go? Woo! Oh, that's got a nice little snap to it. Woo! And speeding. Okay, all right. Well, that's pretty snappy. Now, the first thing that really hits me is the fact that this transmission is on the job, man. You put your foot in it and it's down gearing. It's getting what it's getting its job done. It's getting what it's doing done. Look, good transmission. I'm really glad they stuck with a 6-speed here instead of putting in the 9-speed that's also available in the Pilot. This is just a much better sort of gearbox. It shifts better, it behaves better, and I think in this particular truck it's just absolutely fabulous. This engine Not the most high-tech V6 on the market. It's been around for a while, but it is one of the more refined V6s out there, and because it now has direct injection, it does have more horsepower than it used to. Now, fuel economy, this is rated at 21 mpg combined. In my week with it, before all of this fooling around, I did achieve 20 mpg, and it did lean a little bit more city driving than highway, so I'm pretty impressed with it overall. It can tow 5,000 pounds, right around a 1,500 pound payload, which is right in the ballpark with many in class, but I do think when it comes to powertrain refinement, this is top of class. I have to tell you, spending a week with this truck has really given me a good thumbnail on this chassis, so let's talk about that. The first thing is the frame and the suspension here, well over 10 years old. This truck's been around a while, and even though they did a lot of retuning with bushings and dampers and things like that, it really does still drive very much like the old Tacoma pickup truck, save for a lot of quiet tuning that's gone on, a lot of refinement. So it is quieter, it is more refined, it feels a little bit more isolated from some of the jitteriness that the old truck used to have, and that's a good thing. But one thing that I really was struck by this week is that on the freeway, this thing has a sweet spot that's right around 50 or 60 miles an hour. And every vehicle has a sweet spot, and that's that place where it just feels right when you're cruising down the road. And personally, when I'm driving a vehicle, I always sort of gravitate towards that spot, irregardless of what the speedometer says. And so this week, I've been finding myself looking down at the speedometer on the freeway and going like 60 miles an hour in a 65 zone, because that's just where the truck feels good. So what happens is, pushing it at 65, 70, even 75 with traffic, you really feel like you're pushing this thing, and that is purely a perception. You're still only turning a little over 2,000 RPM at 70, 75. So it's just the way they've tuned the throttle mapping, the way the chassis feels. It's just something that I thought I'd note. But overall, this is a much quieter, peaceful existence than the last generation truck when you're going down the road. If you watch my videos at all, you know one thing I always love to do is bring a truck or a crossover or an SUV out here to the Desert Washboard Road. Even though it's not hardcore off-roading, it's a great way to see how well put together this thing is and how well isolated it is from all the rigors of noise, vibration, and harshness, because even though this road is relatively well groomed, it's got a vibrating surface to it known as the washboard, which can make even some of the best vehicles out there feel like a complete pile. And so what I'm noticing here is this feels a lot better than the last generation Tacoma that I brought out here. And what I will point out here is that the stability control on this is tuned pretty aggressively. As I go around some of these corners and let the tail end sort of swing out a little bit, it kicks in quite quickly. As you can see right there, it got right in there. So that's good, because it's just safer that way. These gravel roads can really surprise you sometimes, and you don't want surprises if you're out trying to have some fun with your vehicle. So the first thing I've got to get across here as we starting to talk about ride and handling is the fact that this truck is entirely and completely different than anything else in the midsize truck class, and that's because obviously their body on frame, this is unibody construction, and that translates to a completely different feel. This feels just like a car or a crossover SUV in its solidity and its refinement. Independent suspension front and rear. Nobody else in class has that either, and so because of that, there's just a sense of dynamics here and a sense of handling that it just trumps everything else in class. I'm just going to put that right out there to start with. And how does it feel? Well, as you lay it into a curve, it's sharp, it's precise. When you go over bumpy roads or pavement that's got ripples in it, it doesn't have that jitteriness that you get with a solid axle, a body on frame vehicle. So those are just the first out of the gate things that really make this thing a nice driving vehicle. Out here on the highway, it's very quiet, very stable. I'm on a curvy road right here at speed. Allows nice confident cornering. Even though these aren't the grippiest tires in the world, it handles quite well. So out here on the pavement, it's a no-brainer that this is a vehicle that is very impressive, but it's off the pavement where pickup needs to shine. pounds. So what am I finding here? Well, first thing is, this does have a very solid structure. The suspension bolted together pretty tightly. I'm not getting very much in the way of looseness or shuddering, either in the suspension or in the steering. In that way, it's impressing me pretty well. But what I am getting is a lot of resonance through here, and over some of the ruts and bumps, a little bit of harshness. Now, the suspension itself and the steering, very well bolted together. I'm not getting any rattling or feeling a looseness there. It's very tight to the chassis. It's just that because it is tuned so tight for the road, it does tend to be a little bit harsh when you do hit the rougher stuff at speed. The other thing, a little bit of rattling in the interior trims here, nothing major. It's actually pretty common, but a little bit it is. Well, which one of these two trucks is best? Honestly, that's in the eye of the beholder, because these are two completely different kinds of products. They're designed differently, they're built differently, and if we're honest, they're aimed at a completely different kind of customer. The Ridgeline, arguably, it handles better. It's more comfortable, it rides quieter, it's probably better for long road trips. The Toyota Tacoma, on the other hand, probably better for off-roading, and it does tow a lot more, 6,800 pounds versus 5,000 pounds for that Ridgeline. And again, that really has everything to do with how they're constructed. So there's that. What do you think? Comment down below. Let me know what you think of either one of these two trucks. Keep it nice, of course, and if you want to see our detailed drive review on either one of these trucks, click here or here. Gets into far more detail than what we've done here. Either way, stay tuned.